This should be played at high volume.
Welcome to Outta Pocket. Here's your host, Michael Davis.
It is time to get out of pocket. I'm your host, Michael Davis, joined by producer Desmond Johnson and first-time guest from he's on a lot of stuff. He's from WRAL. He's the commentator for asst Wrestling, and they just announced Jonathan Gresham versus Shelton Benjamin at their next event. Joined by Chris Lee. Super excited to have him on. I tweeted out at him that I've watched him, since I was a kid, on TV talking about sports and kind of followed his wrestling career a little bit, and didn't want to make you feel too old. Looking as fresh as ever. And one mention that we're talking Charlotte Hornets today. Des was out of the studio yesterday when the news broke that Josh Longstaff was brought on to join the coaching staff with Charles Lee. Wanted to get your reactions to this hire. You guys like to follow the Charlotte Hornets. So, Chris, I'll start with you on your reaction.
Honestly, when it comes down to Charlotte Hornets, there's not much that can really make me react until they start winning games. I was excited about the James Borrego hire and the people he brought along, and thinking that he could help bring pretty much a mini Spurs, not a dynasty, but a mini Spurs situation to Charlotte, since he comes from that tree. And that didn't work out, and nothing really has worked out for the Hornets since coming back to Charlotte. So honestly, it's, any of these hires, like Charles Lee, I like him as a hire, but any of these hires, it's all wait and see. Are they going to be around in a year and a half? How are they going to draft? And this is a bad draft. They got a pretty bad, I would have thought they would have gotten hired in 6 in the draft lottery, but it's a wait and see approach for me when it comes down to the Hornets.
Yeah, and the Hornets fans have been wanting to have the team be successful for a number of years, and hopefully they can turn it around. Des, you've mentioned the youth that's taken over the NBA. We watched the Oklahoma City Thunder, who was bottom of the barrel, and now they're thriving. Do you think this hiring of Longstaff, who's worked under Mike Budenholzer, who's a 2-time coach of the year, he's worked with the Bulls, the Bucks, the Knicks. He worked with the Thunder when they had that big three of Harden and Durant and Westbrook. Do you think this is a step in the right direction by hiring Longstaff?
I mean, it seems like it's a step in the right direction. I'm with Chris in terms of I think the Hornets fans are more cynical than anything else right now. We kind of are a wait and see type of group. We haven't abandoned them. We're just kind of seen the script before. Let's kind of just see what happens, especially if you cover the Hornets and the Panthers. So we're kind of in this weird cycle of we're not getting our hopes up because we've done that before. We're not going to be too down on them because we've done that before too. But I think more people are more interested in the Hornets in the 6th pick because, to be honest, to me, First, I was upset that Atlanta got it because Atlanta was in the play-in. So I'm like, Atlanta got the number 1 overall pick. Then I'm like, well, this is actually considered one of the weakest drafts in 20-plus years. So how bad is it really that they got the 6th pick? Because for what they need, they didn't need that at number 1. They can get what they need at number 6. I'm looking at Connor Klingon from UConn, Zach Edey, who's been projected in the teens. They could trade down, get Zach Edey at 11 or 12. Because really what the Hornets need is a rim protector right now. But for everything else that they've gotten, they need somebody to protect the rim. It's supposed to be Mark Williams, but with back injuries, typically back injuries don't get better as you get older. So I'm looking at it I don't know what we have with Mark Williams. Let's hedge our bets on that and actually, get a big man. And it seems like the NBA is coming back around to size again anyway. The time of small ball seems like it's kind of fading away. So I would like for them to get a big man with that 6th pick, pair him with Mark Williams, and then you're going to have 4 top 10 picks in your starting 5 over the past 5 years. Why not Charlotte? We're watching Minnesota do it. We're watching the Knicks do it. We're with less, in terms of where their players were picked. I don't think it's far-fetched to believe that Charlotte can have a similar trajectory if LaMelo Ball is healthy, if Mark Williams is healthy, if they've got their kids out there playing. I don't see why they couldn't ascend the same way Minnesota has.
And especially in the Eastern Conference. And I'll be honest, I'm wrong about Brand Miller. He's
been great.
exceeded my expectations in Charlotte. He's done really good. And I'll be releasing a mock draft on our Instagram at @outpocket_TRSR. Might collab with Tobacco Rhodes Insta channel so we can get that top 10 NBA picks in my first mock draft later this evening. But let's talk about the 6th pick because the lottery didn't go their way. Des mentioned the Atlanta Hawks get number 1. We talked about that on yesterday's episode with Carson and Sean. But are you upset the Hornets didn't get a top 3 pick? Des, you said this class was weak. So, Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it is a weak class, but part of me thinks that because it is a weak class, you especially would want a higher pick just because, like, after 3 or 4, what do you have? And then, somebody like, and there's early projections, but like, after this weekend and after teams start working guys out, we're going to start seeing teams having these draft workouts. Maybe somebody like a Connor Clingan starts moving up the draft board. And then, a guy that you typically would want at 6 is really maybe a fringe 2nd round pick or something like that because of the draft being weak. We really kind of have to see everything kind of shake out. But it would be cool to see a big there. It would be cool maybe for them to figure out what is maybe the replacement for Miles Bridges if he does end up walking. Get a power forward type that's down there, somebody who can kind of really help out on the boards, also kind of be that guy, that utility player that could guard the Jokic's of the world and, the different folks like that. So, I mean, there's a few different needs for the Hornets. I think more than anything, they really need veterans that want to play in Charlotte to kind of help, bring the young kids along. Because I don't think that any of the veterans that they've brought in have really come in and made the impact that you would want them to make. So I'm not really counting on the draft, if that makes sense. I feel like they have all the prospects in the world, like, everybody from JT Thor to, whomever else, like all these guys are supposed to be something. Now we really need veterans to help bring these guys along. And I think that's the real thing. What's going to happen in free agency.
Now that's a good point because, I was just thinking when we were talking that the NBA draft might be weak. So even if you're top prospect, he might not be able to contribute right away like Brandon Miller has this year. Look at this free agency class. It's kind of pretty deep. I mean, at the top of the list, you got Tyrese Maxey, Paul George. LeBron has a player option. Not expecting those guys to come to Charlotte, but when you get to a Pascal Siakam or an OG Anunoby, DeMar DeRozan, maybe Miles Bridges, maybe staying. D'Angelo Russell, Nick Claxton is one from Brooklyn. Do any of those names pique your interest in terms of what the Hornets could do?
No, not really. I don't want them to spend the money, to be honest. I want to see what we have. Like we had bets. We just shipped them all off in the trade deadline. Like we already had. That's the name's probably going on a couple of months. Like Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward,
PJ Washington.
We already had these. There's no reason to redo what we already did. Like the point was to clear the board, see what we have. We've been picking in the top 10 for the past forever. It feels like we've never not really been picking in the top 10. So I mean, we've got top 10 graded guys right now. I'm sitting there watching Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference playoffs, and I'm like, LaMelo Ball went 2 spots after Anthony Edwards in the 2020 draft, and the guy in between him was James Wiseman. You know what I mean? Like LaMelo is he's been an all-star. He's already gotten his bag. He's proven he can be a top talent to build around. Him and Brandon Miller would be one of the tallest backcourts in the NBA. They're both 6'9" or taller. You know what I mean? And then you keep Miles. That should be the priority. Re-sign Miles. Get Mark Williams healthy and on the floor. Get LaMelo some better shoes so he's not twisting his ankle every 18 months or whatever. Like, it's kind of like when the Warriors drafted Steph Curry. And I made this comparison a couple of years ago, and people thought I was crazy because I was like, the Hornets kind of remind me of the Warriors when they first got Steph Curry and they had a bunch of mismatched parts. And it was like, the whole question was, what do you do? Do you trade Steph Curry or do you trade, what was his name? oh my gosh, the guard they ended up trading
Monte
him.
Ellis.
Monte Ellis.
And everybody was mad that they didn't trade Steph because remember at the time Steph was having all these ankle injuries the first 3 years of his career, and nobody knew if he was ever going to really amount to much. And they traded Monte, and when they did that, it opened up the backcourt for Steph, and they eventually turned into what they did. But they did it at the draft. They didn't do it from bringing in people in free agency. They made shrewd moves in the draft and complimented Steph. And then once they had their core and had actually won stuff, that's when they brought in Kevin Durant when they couldn't get past LeBron. So it was like, I want them to build on what they already have. They already have enough talent right now. They just need to get older. Like I think the starting five is probably 25 or less in terms of age each.
Yeah, so the names are escaping me here, but they did bring in guys from free agency. Like you had, what's my man, David West. You had what was
you're talking about the
Warriors.
the Warriors. And they had
Zaza
David West.
Pachulia.
They had Zaza. They had what's my guy that started off with the Clippers, Sean Livingston.
Oh, Sean Livingston, the master of the mid range.
They did bring in certain key people, but they let the guys that they drafted be the stars of the team. And I think that's really what I meant by that, by bringing in free agency, like getting the guys that you can count on coming off the bench. Because like, are we counting on JT Thor? Are we counting on some of these other guys that are supposed to be these prospects that we expected to blossom by now? Like that's mostly what I meant by that. I think you still need to go the free agency route. I don't think any of the names that were named earlier are maybe a Nick Claxton, but other names like that, like I don't need anybody else to come in and try to take the show away from Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. I want somebody who's going to come in and help those guys become better at what they do, but also contribute. Maybe you can, average, 10, 11 points per game. Maybe you can dish out 5 assists. Maybe you can, come in and make sure the team doesn't fall flat when Ball or is injured or he's out of the game for 10 minutes or whatever. Like that's mostly what I meant by bringing in free agents.
I will say this too, with the second round pick the Hornets have, a guy that I would like for them to kick the tires on is Jamal Sneed, the point guard from Houston. He'll be there probably top of the second round. He'd provide a very good defensive presence off the bench that they need in the second unit. And I saw it mocked to Charlotte. I think it was all Hornets that had mocked him going there. And I was like, ooh, I like that. From what I saw from him this year, if they could get him in the second to be the backup point guard and to grow with LaMelo and whoever else they would have, that would be good. I've seen Stephon Castle mock to us as well. I'm not sure if I like that one as much because I don't know how much it actually helps with what we already have. I was like, we need a big man. I really want Zach Edey, to be honest. Like the more I think about it, he's 7'4". You can't teach height. You know what I mean? Like he's got good stuff around the rim, and he can rim protect. They need somebody who can rim protect.
He's too slow. Like in this NBA.
Is
like,
he?
But going against against a Wemby, going against Jokic is different. He can handle the ball. Like is Zach Edey like putting the ball on the floor the way Jokic is? Like you got Wemby who can gallop like a gazelle. You have Chet Holmgren. Like those guys can move. Like Zach Edey is going to get left in the dust. Like he looked really good against DJ Burns because DJ Burns also can't move. But then when he went against Connor Clingan, and that's an NBA player right there.
Would you rather have Clingan? Would you rather have Clingan than Edey?
Yes, absolutely.
I wouldn't balk at that at all. I just assume he might be gone by the time we pick.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and I agree with that. But if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather have Clingan.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I would put Cleveland over Edey, but I think people are sleep on Edey a little bit because, I mean, we've seen Jokic, and Jokic has more of an offensive playmaking ability, but I mean, I would rather take Zach Edey, who was productive in college, rather than like a Bronny James who just outshined at the draft combine.
I was wondering if we were going to talk about Bronny today. I was wondering if he was going to pop up. Did you see he measured 6'1"? At the combine, he was listed at 6'4" at USC. That's a huge difference. Like
that's a big difference.
You know what I'm saying? Like I've listened to people say RJ Davis is not draftable because of his size. If Bronny James gets drafted and he's 6'1" and a quarter or whatever he is, and RJ Davis, the ACC Player of the Year and first team All-American, shooting over 40% from three, is undraftable.
Nepotism.
something's wrong here. Yeah, something's
But
totally wrong
because
here.
the only thing is, like, that LeBron wants to play with his son, and LeBron's not going to make a decision on where he's going to play until his son gets drafted.
Did you
So,
see
like,
he was at
so
Cleveland last night? They were
so
sitting front row, him and Savannah.
I did see that. So, like, every
Calculated.
team is basically trying to do that. It's not even about Bronny. It's about getting LeBron James and what he brings. So,
Well, in this week class, do you think a team thinks like that? Like, hey, we're probably not going to get a starter in our lineup. Let's just go get Bronny, and hopefully that attracts LeBron James.
I don't think they do. I don't think teams want to get played by LeBron James, because really LeBron's going one or two. He's staying in LA, which is 80% to me. Like, he's at the end of his career, and the comments he was making at the end of these games in the playoffs makes me feel like basketball is not his top priority anymore. Like, he's got other stuff going on media wise and everything else. His companies are out there. They're making movies and stuff. He's transitioning to the end of his career. He's said in the past he'd like to play with Bronny, but he's pulled away from that over the past year because the media really latched onto it and was like, oh, he's going to go wherever Bronny goes. But Bronny's not good enough to play in the NBA, in my opinion. Like, he's just not. Like, if it was
G
Bron
League
Jones, yeah, I don't even know if he's good enough to play in the G League. He wasn't really good enough to play in the Pac-12 like last year. You know what I mean? They say he was out of position. He averaged 4 points per game, and we're sitting there talking about this dude like he's a first-round draft pick. And he's 6'1". So they lied in the flyer all year about how tall he was. So I'm just like, what does he play? He's not a point guard. He can't play shooting guard at 6'1" in the NBA. Like, what does he play? Like, I think the Lakers would draft him in the second round just to appease LeBron. I don't think they would use first on him, but
he's definitely a second round pick. I don't think anybody's going to reach for a first round pick on him. He's definitely a second round pick. And the second rounders are typically going to be guys that's going to go back and forth to the G League. So, so that's what I assume it'll be. I assume it's going to be Lakers or some other team that would have maybe a legit shot at getting LeBron. I don't think like the Hornets would reach for Bronny or something like that, thinking that LeBron would come to Charlotte. That's not happening. That's not what I meant by that. But as far as like the Lakers or somebody, that's what's going to happen. And this is one of the reasons why the draft is so bad this year. It's because of people like Bronny. Now, Bronny's situation is because of his dad. But the NBA started drafting on potential. Mm-hmm. And now we're starting to see that potential is not living up for a lot of these guys in here in the drafts. Like, so now you're starting to have these situations where you have really good, solid players who played 4 years in college are either not get drafted, they're going overseas, or maybe they're all of a sudden getting drafted in the second round. And then you see them like become superstars like a Jalen Brunson. Yep. And you're just like, what did this come from?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he developed. He got stronger. He played 4 years. He got older. And like, oh my God, it works. Like Michael Jordan played 3 years in college. Oh my God, what a concept. It works. Like, not every kid is Zion Williamson and he stays injured. Not every kid is, NBA ready after high school. So I think we need to, like, that's one of the things I think we need to deal with right there is stop drafting people on potential. Like, draft people for what they can contribute to your team this coming year. And if they can contribute to your team, then you draft them higher.
I would draft a RJ Davis before I would draft a freshman point guard that played this year. Like, I would draft RJ Davis before I draft Stephon Castle. You know what I mean? But Stephon Castle is going to go in the top 10 because of 100%. What Chris just said. And it bothers me. It really bothers me because, like, we've watched RJ Davis get better for the past 4 years, like in increments. Like, we've seen it to the point where he's now a first-team All-American. He's probably going to be the face of college basketball next year because he's coming back.
And when the ball hog left their team, I saw him really shine.
I'm just saying. I wasn't going to say anything because we still got love for love, but, it did open up the floor when
left the team. You saw what happened. ACC Player of the Year.
When they got separated, it did kind of help us out. So I can't be too mad that he left.
What? And Chris made a good point about like Bronny, and Des brought this up like 3 weeks ago about like if it was Bronny Smith, he wouldn't be drafted.
No,
and
he wouldn't be at the combine. You know what I mean? Like, he wouldn't even be there. Like, he's getting invited because LeBron James is his dad. And and LeBron has pushed the narrative. If LeBron hadn't said anything about it, like Michael Jordan never talked about his kids. They play basketball, they play college ball. But he never pushed for Marcus Jordan to get drafted and that he would go play for the the Grizzlies if they drafted him or whatever. Like, I don't know. It just, the whole thing is weird.
And the NFL was, very interesting this year. You had Marvin Harrison Jr., who was actually a good enough prospect to be a top 5 draft pick. Then you had guys like Frank Gore Jr., who was undrafted, Brendan Rice, who was like a 6th round draft pick. I mean, the NFL teams were like, let's not draft on potential. Let's draft on what they actually did in college. We're closing in on our 1 o'clock hour, and I did bring Chris Lee on, and I wanted to ask you a wrestling question. If people are unaware, he does commentary for Ashe Wrestling. They just announced Jonathan Gresham versus Shelton Benjamin. That's going to be a great match. But he was also a professional wrestler himself, and he follows what's happening on TV right now. And they alluded, it's not official yet, but they alluded to Cody Rhodes versus Logan Paul a week from Saturday at King and Queen of the Ring, potentially being title for title, unifying the WWE and United States title. I have my own opinions on this, but Chris, do you think this would be the right decision to unify these 2 titles?
No, and I don't think they're going to do it. This feels like a non-finish in my mind, maybe a way to introduce the next feud. And it gives Logan Paul the rub at the same time, right? Like Logan Paul, you take advantage of what he is. Like he's really good for the short length of time he's been in pro wrestling. A lot of it is because, I'm friends with Shane Helms, the Hurricane. When you have somebody like that who can practice your one match with you for an entire month, of course you're going to go to WrestleMania and kill it. You know what you've been doing, right? Everybody else is kind of putting their matches together that day. And that's no shade against Logan Paul, but like he's a great athlete and he can pull that off. And so that's why he looks good. So you give him the rub going against this guy, big YouTube guy that's going to do numbers and buys and all that type of stuff. People are going to sign up for Peacock and all that good stuff. And it's going to be in Saudi Arabia, so it's big money. That's what it's really about. But it feels like a non-finish, something's going to happen at the end of that match to make it not go to a final. And then that's going to put Cody into his real feud as we are heading closer to SummerSlam. So, I don't see this as a unification. I think it'll be not smart of them to do so because you're going to need a mid-card title. And Logan Paul is taking care of that right now on SmackDown. So
Logan Paul's only defended that title twice, I think, since he won it.
Yeah,
SummerSlam and WrestleMania. So I mean, all the people who are complaining about Roman Reigns or whatever, Logan Paul's only done it twice, and he's rarely on TV. But his outside brand is why they've got it on him right now in terms of Prime, the energy drink, and everything else. He's one of the more popular people in social media, so I understand why they have it on him. But I do think they need to get it off of him and put it on someone like AJ Styles or LA Knight or whoever. I did think if they did do it, you get the Grand Slam for Cody, you get that knocked out. And then the next pay-per-view, you just schedule a triple threat against the 2 guys he's been fighting right now, AJ Styles and LA Knight and Cody. And one of them pins the other, wins the belt. Cody's still clean. Cody's still got the Universal title, yada, yada, yada. You can do it that way. But I'm kind of with Chris. If you think about it, since they start doing these Saudi shows, no belts change hands at the Saudi shows. Like, they don't do big storyline changes at any of these Saudi shows. So I don't expect even Brock and Roman in the Hell in a Cell or whatever, when it was Roman spearing Brock out the door or whatever, and Brock won because his back at the mat first or something crazy like that. Remember that was in Saudi Arabia. So I mean, yeah, I think probably a DQ of some sort. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bloodline's involved in it in some sort.
That's what I'm thinking, bro.
Run in, maybe an introduction of a new character. I don't know. I keep hearing Bad Luck Fale. Like I keep hearing Bad Luck Fale coming in. They literally are taking Bullet Club, like OG Bullet Club, and just absorbing them into the Bullet Club. I
love that.
But which is great, like, because I keep seeing people going, "Oh, all the OG Bullet Club is in WWE now. They should reform it." I'm like, nah. GOD's better off in Bloodline than they are rebuilding Bullet Club. Like, I don't think they can even use the name GOD. They haven't said it in an official term. I know Corey Graves has said it in commentary, but they're building towards that stuff. Like Bloodline Cody, that's not done. Like, that's a year-long storyline. I'm seeing they're aiming for Cody and The Rock eventually, which we saw set up, and of course, it's eventually going to be Rock and Reigns. It's just the story's going to be more layered out by the time we get to it, which is what we all wanted in the first place. So, yeah. I don't know. I just I think it's gonna be a no DQ. I don't think they're gonna do title for title. Not at a Saudi show.
Yeah, I would hope not. And maybe this is a way to introduce the Wyatt Six and what Uncle Howdy's doing with WWE. That could be potentially something they set up.
They may debut during that show. I don't know if it'll be in that match, but the little QR codes and stuff, it seems like they're kind of aiming towards that date. So I could see it. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. Now that you brought it up, I don't know how I feel about them carrying it on, that IP. Like, it'd almost be better if they'd made something brand new, in my opinion. But I haven't seen it yet, so we'll see how it is. But I was never a big Bo Dallas fan, so I don't know how this is going to look or how it's going to work without Bray, you know?
Yeah, and as a big Bray fan, I hope this would be done well, but I mean, only Bray could execute what Bray's mastermind brought up. Chris has to get out of here, but Chris, thank you so much for hopping on today. It was a pleasure meeting you. Everybody go follow his stuff with WRAL. Go see Ashe Wrestling. I believe they're in Charlotte for their next show, the Gresham and Benjamin match. And Chris,
June 22nd.
June 22nd. And you're welcome on Out of Pocket, or even drop the mic anytime you want.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate it, man. Let me know if you ever need me again.
Awesome. Well,
Chris, I'll holler at you. No, that's my boy. I'll holler at you.
That's his boy. Well, Chris, thank you. Des, we have a couple NBA playoff games tonight. We usually end our shows with that aged well. We got the Pacers and the Knicks now that they've tied the series up 2-2, as well as the Timberwolves Nuggets tied up 2-2 now. We talked about this on yesterday's show. Who do you think wins these two games between the Pacers Knicks and then Nuggets Timberwolves?
Pacers Knicks is 2-2, right? They're tied 2-2. This is the crucial game for the Knicks because the Knicks are running out of bodies. If they had their full allotment of players, like their 8-man rotation they normally run with Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson and all these dudes that are out, I'd feel better about it. Even Brunson's kind of banged up. If the Pacers win Game 5 in New York, it's a wrap. Like, they're going to end up winning the series 4-2 because they're just running out of gas. Like, I feel bad, too, because I was starting to root for the Knicks. I really like what they're doing. But they just don't have enough bodies. And the Pacers play at the fastest offensive pace of any team in the NBA. So, I mean, they don't really play defense, but you don't have to when you're scoring 130 points a game or whatever. So, I'm going to pick the Pacers, although I'm rooting for the Knicks. And then the Timberwolves and the Nuggets, I can't figure out if the Nuggets have figured the Timberwolves out or the Timberwolves just let one get away. Like, they lost by 8 the other night, right? But that 8-point swing happened at the end of the first half. The 3, and then they stole it, and then they stole it again. And Murray from half court with a 3. Like, it was an 8-point swing. They lose, and the Wolves lose by 8. And that game was pretty well matched, but most of the night, it's my favorite series out of all the ones going on right now. I'm going to pull back from the whole Anthony Edwards looks like Michael Jordan comparison. I've seen more. He looks more like Dwayne Wade, and I kind of agree with that one more. It's kind of a more fair comparison because Jordan, Roy Williams said it best in the Last Dance documentary. Jordan was the only player he ever saw that had an on-off switch and never freaking turned it off. You know what I mean? Like, no matter what, darts, basketball, taking the track, like, he was competing, like everything, cards. I don't know if Anthony Edwards is there yet. Some of his moves and some of his personality reminds me of MJ, but it actually does remind me a little bit more of Dwayne Wade the more I watch him play. So I'm rooting for the Timberwolves because I hate the Nuggets. They've put my Lakers out the past 2 years, and they've had 2 coaches fired from the Lakers. So it's like I'm kind of rooting for the Timberwolves, but I could see the Nuggets actually pulling this off tonight too. It's at home. It's in Denver, but the road game is won. I mean, the road team has won each of these games in the series, which is bananas. But I could see Denver and the Pacers winning tonight unless Karl Anthony Towns shows up, because that seems to be the difference with the Timberwolves. If Karl Anthony Towns scores 20 points, the Timberwolves will win. If he doesn't, they will lose. That's pretty much kind of where they are.
Yeah, that I almost honestly agree with you, because the Pacers, if they're hot and if Halliburton is scoring the way he is, like, they're almost unbeatable, because not every team can put up 120, 130, 140 points a night. Mitchell Robinson's out for the rest of the playoffs. He just had surgery, I believe, last night. Minnesota Timberwolves and Denver Nuggets. everyone just like forgot the Denver Nuggets won NBA championship last year for a reason. Like they know what they're doing. They have a 3-time MVP on their side. And yeah, you have the 4-time defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert, on the other side. But I mean, championship pedigree matters in the NBA. So we'll keep a close eye on these. The Celtics might end their series tomorrow night against the Cavaliers. The Thunder and Mavs are tied 2 apiece tomorrow. And Out Pocket will be back Thursday as part of your lunch break sports roundtable. Super thankful for the guys who popped on yesterday, Carson and Sean. Super thankful for Chris Lee making his Out Pocket debut today in the car. So really appreciate that. Appreciate Des letting me produce yesterday and hopping on again today. And thank you, Booking Like a Mark. He says Logan Paul won the U.S. title.
Oh, yeah, he did. He beat Rey Mysterio. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, with the brass knucks.
Yeah, with the brass knuckles. That's the only time, though, right? I can't think of any other time any titles have changed hands in Saudi Arabia, especially the big ones. That's what he's talking about. This
was the worst one. Goldberg beating the Fiend.
Oh, that's right. That happened there, too. All right. Well, my whole point's been blown up, so. Oh, man. I completely forgot that I was in Saudi Arabia, but yeah, you're right. That did happen there.
Yeah,
so.
that was
rarely changed. How about that? They rarely changed.
Rarely.
Yeah, there we go.
That helps put a blanket over it. Yeah, super thankful for Booking Like a Mark and everybody who's been watching Out Pocket live as part of your lunch break. We'll be back Thursday. No Drop the Mic tomorrow on vacation. We'll be back next week with a preview for this Queen of the Ring pay-per-view, as well as AEW's Double or Nothing. But for Michael Davis, it's been Chris Lee and Desmond Johnson on the Out Pocket with Michael Davis. We'll see you back on Thursday right here on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel.